I thought the worst day of my life would be the day I found out my wife had been seeing my brother. I was wrong. The worst day was the night my parents looked at me, looked at the evidence, and still acted like I was the one who had ruined the family. My name is Ethan Miller. I was 34 years old when my marriage ended, but honestly, the damage started long before I ever met my wife. It started with my brother, Ryan. Ryan was 3 years older than me, and in my family, 3 years might as well have been 3 crowns. He was the golden son. The charming one. The successful one. The one who could walk into a room, say almost nothing, and somehow leave with everyone thinking he had just saved the evening. I was the quiet brother. That was the label I got early and never managed to peel off. Ryan played sports. I fixed things. Ryan had a crowd around him. I had 2 close friends and a part-time job after school. Ryan could talk our parents into anything. I usually had to prove I deserved whatever I asked for. When Ryan got promoted in real estate, my parents threw a dinner. When I got a good job in construction project management, my dad said, "That's solid, Ethan. Steady work is important." Steady. That was me. Not exciting. Not impressive. Just steady. Then I met Claire. Claire was different from anyone my family had ever brought into my life. She was warm, smart, and funny in a way that didn't make you feel like the joke was being aimed at your ribs. She worked in marketing, loved old bookstores, and had this way of listening that made me feel like I wasn't background noise. For the first time, I felt chosen. Not compared. Not tolerated. Chosen. When I introduced her to my family, my mother loved her immediately. My father said she had good energy, which was his way of saying she smiled enough to make him comfortable. Ryan shook her hand, looked at me, and said, "Well, little brother, maybe there's hope for you after all." Everyone laughed. I laughed too. I had spent my whole life laughing at Ryan's little comments because that was easier than explaining why they hurt. At our wedding, Ryan gave the best man speech. He was polished, charming, perfect, of course. He talked about how I had always been dependable, loyal, and quietly stubborn, which got a few laughs. Then he turned to Claire, lifted his glass, and said, "And Claire, if you ever get tired of the quiet brother, you know where to find the fun one." The room exploded with laughter. Claire laughed too. She touched my arm and whispered, "He's terrible." I smiled because it was my wedding day. I was not going to let one Ryan joke ruin it. But I remember the way he looked at her when he said it. Not like a brother teasing another brother. Not exactly. It was more like he was testing a door handle. And everyone in that room helped him pretend it was just a joke. That was the thing about Ryan. He never kicked a door open. He leaned against it with a smile until everyone forgot the door was supposed to be locked. For the first year, our marriage was good. Not perfect, because no marriage is, unless you're lying to yourself or selling something online, but good. Claire and I built routines. Saturday coffee. Bad takeout on Thursdays. Long walks when Colorado weather remembered it had manners. Ryan was around, but not too much. Family dinners. Holidays. Random group texts. Nothing strange. At least, nothing I wanted to call strange. Looking back, I think the first real warning sign was how comfortable he became with my wife when I wasn't part of the conversation anymore. Not rude. Not obvious. Just comfortable. Too comfortable. And like a fool, I told myself the same thing everyone had always told me about Ryan. That's just how he is. It started with small things. Small things are dangerous because they give you time to talk yourself out of believing them. Ryan began texting Claire directly. At first, it was innocent enough. He wanted her opinion on a birthday gift for our mother. Then he needed help choosing new furniture for a condo he was staging. Then he was asking about restaurants, paint colors, marketing ideas for one of his listings. Claire told me about some of it, which made it easier to ignore. "He just wants a woman's opinion," she said one night while we were cleaning up after dinner. I laughed and said, "Ryan has known women before." She rolled her eyes. "Don't be weird." That word showed up early. Weird. I didn't like that Ryan texted my wife so much, and somehow that made me weird. At family dinners, Ryan would pull Claire into conversations like they had their own private language. He would say, "Claire gets it," or, "Claire was telling me," or, "I asked Claire about that," not, "You too." Not Ethan and Claire. Just Claire. My mother loved it. She said it was wonderful that Claire fit in so well. My father said Ryan had always been good at making people feel welcome. Nobody noticed that I was sitting there feeling like a guest in my own marriage. One Sunday, we were at my parents' house for dinner. Ryan showed everyone pictures of a luxury property he was helping sell outside Boulder. Big windows, mountain view, kitchen larger than my first apartment. Claire leaned over his phone, laughing at something he said. Ryan looked at me and said, "Ethan got lucky. I still don't know how he pulled this off." There it was again. Everyone laughed. Claire smiled, but I saw her glance at me quickly, like she wanted to check if I had taken it badly. I had. But I swallowed it. That was another habit I had learned in my family. Swallow first, feel later. On the drive home, I told Claire I didn't love the way Ryan joked about us. She sighed before I even finished the sentence. Ethan, he jokes with everyone. Not like that. He's your brother. I know who he is. Then why are you acting like he's some stranger trying to steal me? The car went quiet. I hadn't said that. I hadn't even thought it clearly yet. But hearing her say it made something cold move through my chest. I said, that's not what I meant. She looked out the window. It feels like what you meant. After that, I tried harder not to react. That's the trap. Once someone makes you afraid of looking insecure, you start helping them hide the very thing hurting you. Ryan began stopping by our house when I was still at work. The first time, Claire mentioned it casually. Ryan dropped off that book your mom wanted me to borrow. I said. He came here? Yeah. For like 10 minutes. But the book was on the coffee table for 3 weeks, untouched. Another time, I came home and smelled cologne in the hallway. Not mine. I barely wore any unless Claire reminded me we were going somewhere that required more effort than clean jeans. Ryan's jacket was on the chair. Claire said he had stopped by because he was nearby. Nearby became a magic word. Ryan was always nearby. Near our house. Near Claire's office. Near the coffee shop she liked. Near whatever part of town made his presence sound accidental. When I brought it up, Claire got sharper. You're making me feel like I have to report every conversation. I said. I'm asking why my brother is always around when I'm not. She folded her arms. Do you hear yourself? That line hurt more than it should have. Because I did hear myself. I heard a man starting to sound like the kind of husband I never wanted to be. Suspicious. Petty. Watching shadows. And Ryan knew it. He was patient. He never pushed hard enough for me to have proof. He never crossed a line in front of me that I could point to without sounding ridiculous. He just stood near the line with a smile. Then one Tuesday night, I came home early. And finally, the smile slipped. My meeting was canceled at the last minute. Normally, I would have stayed at the office and caught up on paperwork, but I had a headache, and Denver traffic was already starting to build. So I packed my laptop, told my assistant I was leaving, and drove home. I remember the sky that evening. Gray-blue, the kind of winter light that makes everything look a little more honest than people want it. When I turned onto our street, I noticed Ryan's car. Not in our driveway. Not parked in front of our house. It was half a block down, tucked behind a large pickup truck, like someone had chosen a spot where it wouldn't be seen from our front window. My first thought was stupidly generous. Maybe there was no space. There was space. There was plenty of space. I sat in my car for a few seconds with my hand on the steering wheel. My heart was beating too hard for something I had no proof of. Then I told myself to stop being dramatic, got out, and walked to the house. When I opened the door, the house went quiet. That was the first thing I noticed. Not voices stopping. Not music lowering. Just quiet, like the house itself had held its breath. Claire came out of the living room. Her face changed when she saw me. Only for a second, but I saw it. Surprise. Fear. Then annoyance. Ryan was behind her, standing near the couch. His jacket was thrown over the back of a chair. His sleeves were rolled up. He smiled before I said anything. Hey, man, he said. You're home early. Not. What a surprise. Not. Good to see you. You're home early. I looked at Claire. What's going on? She blinked. Ryan stopped by. I can see that. Ryan chuckled. Relax. You look like you caught us robbing a bank. I didn't laugh. Claire crossed her arms. He was helping me with your mom's anniversary gift. My mom's anniversary gift? Yes, Ethan. Her tone was already tired, like I had been accusing her for an hour instead of standing in my own doorway asking a question. I looked around the room. 2 glasses on the coffee table. A half-empty bottle of wine. Ryan's phone face down beside Claire's. It was not enough. That was what made it worse. It was never enough. Not enough to accuse. Not enough to prove. Just enough to poison the air. I said, why is your car parked down the street? Ryan's smile changed, only slightly. Then he shrugged. There was a delivery truck when I got here. There hadn't been a delivery truck. I had driven past the entire street. Claire stepped between us, not physically, but with her voice. Are you seriously interrogating him? I'm asking a question. No, you're acting like I did something wrong. Ryan lifted his hands like the reasonable man in the room. Maybe I should go. Claire turned to him. You don't have to leave because Ethan is being weird. There was that word again. Weird. Ryan looked at me with something almost like pity. That look did more damage than if he had punched me. He left 5 minutes later. Claire barely spoke to me the rest of the night. When I tried to explain why the situation bothered me, she said, I can't live in a marriage where I have to defend normal human interaction. Normal human interaction. That was what she called it. The next day, she changed her phone password. When I noticed and asked about it, she said, because you've been making me uncomfortable. I said, I've never gone through your phone. But you wanted to. I hadn't. Not then, but once someone punishes you for something you haven't done, they make it easier to become the person they're accusing you of being. Over the next few weeks, Claire became careful. Not kinder, careful. Her phone stayed face down. She laughed less with me. She stayed late at work more often. When I asked simple questions, she gave answers with edges. Ryan, meanwhile, became extra friendly around our parents. He asked how I was doing in that concerned older brother voice that made my mother soften immediately. One night, my mom called and said, "Ryan mentioned you've seemed stressed lately." I stared at the kitchen wall. He did? He's worried about you. Of course he was. That was Ryan's genius. He didn't defend himself first. He made everyone worry about me. By the time I spoke, the room had already been prepared against me. Gaslighting is a word people throw around a lot, but when you're actually living inside it, it doesn't feel like a word. It feels like checking the same memory 10 times and still wondering if you invented it. Claire began telling me I was different. "You're not yourself anymore. You're always watching me. You don't trust anyone. You need to talk to somebody." The cruel part was that some of it was starting to look true. I was watching. I was anxious. I was tense every time her phone lit up. But I hadn't started that fire. I was just choking on the smoke. Ryan played his part perfectly. At family dinners, he was patient with me. Too patient. If I interrupted him, he smiled. If I disagreed with him, he looked down like he was giving me grace. If Claire seemed upset, he noticed just enough for everyone else to notice him noticing. My parents responded exactly the way he knew they would. My mother pulled me aside one Sunday and said, "Ethan, honey, marriage is hard. But suspicion can ruin a good woman." A good woman. I wanted to ask her what made Claire good and me suspicious, but I already knew the answer. Claire cried prettier than I explained. My father was more direct. "Don't become the kind of man who drives his wife away and then blames everyone else." That one stayed with me, because that was the story Ryan was building. Not that he had crossed a line. Not that Claire was lying. The story was that I was pushing my wife into needing comfort, and Ryan was just the brother kind enough to provide it. One Friday evening, we had dinner at my parents' house. Ryan was there. Claire sat beside me, but her body angled toward him. It was such a small thing. A knee turned slightly, a shoulder open in his direction. Nothing I could say out loud without sounding insane. After dinner, while my mother served coffee, Ryan made a joke about how Claire had better taste than anyone in the family. Claire laughed. I looked at him and asked, quietly, "Were you alone with my wife that Tuesday night before I came home?" The room froze. Ryan didn't get angry. That would have helped me. Instead, he closed his eyes and sighed. "This is what I was talking about," he said softly. My mother looked at me. "Ethan," I said, "I'm asking a simple question." Ryan shook his head. "No, you're not. You're trying to humiliate me because you don't trust your own wife." Claire's eyes filled with tears right on cue. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered. My father set his coffee cup down. "Enough." I looked around the table. My mother's face was embarrassed. My father's was stern. Claire was crying. Ryan looked wounded. And I realized I had walked into a play where everyone else had already rehearsed. My mother said, "Ethan, apologize to your brother." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because my mind couldn't make the sentence fit reality. "Apologize? You accused him in front of us." I asked him a question. My father said, "You're going to destroy your marriage if you keep acting this way." Claire covered her face. Ryan leaned back, silent now, letting them work for him. That was another thing Ryan knew how to do. He didn't have to swing the hammer once other people picked it up. I looked at Claire and waited for her to say something. Anything. Even a week. "This is complicated." She said nothing. So I apologized. I looked at Ryan, my own brother, and said, "I'm sorry." Ryan stood up and hugged me. His hand pressed against my back, and near my ear, so quietly only I could hear, he said, "See? That wasn't so hard." That was the moment I stopped trying to convince anyone. That was the moment I decided I needed proof. After that dinner, I became calm in a way that scared even me. I didn't ask Claire where she was going. I didn't mention Ryan. I didn't react when she turned her phone away. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner when it was my turn, and slept beside a woman I no longer trusted. She seemed relieved. That told me more than any confession would have. Ryan became bolder. Not obvious, but relaxed. Like he believed I had been trained. Maybe I had. A week later, I checked the doorbell camera. I didn't expect much. Maybe I wanted to find nothing. Maybe some part of me still wanted the universe to hand me proof that I was wrong and stupid and could go back to pretending. Instead, I found Ryan. Again and again. He had come to our house 6 times in 3 weeks when I was at work. One visit lasted 14 minutes. Another lasted nearly 2 hours. 2 hours. I sat at my desk with the footage open, listening to the hum of my laptop fan. There was no sound on the inside of the house. No confession. No dramatic scene. Just my brother walking through my front door like he belonged there. The next piece came from a credit card statement. A restaurant charge downtown. 2 dinners. A bottle of wine. The same night Claire told me she was grabbing dinner with her friend Megan. I knew Megan. Megan was pregnant and had been sick for weeks. She was not drinking wine downtown on a Wednesday. Then there was the iPad. Claire had an old iPad she barely used anymore. It sat in a drawer under old chargers and random cables. I was looking for a spare adapter when the screen lit up with a message notification. Ryan. I stood there for a long time before touching it. I am not proud of that part. I know people will argue about privacy. Fine. They can argue from the comfort of marriages where their spouse isn't helping their brother make them feel unstable. The iPad was still synced to her messages. I read enough to stop breathing normally. Not everything was explicit. That somehow made it worse. There were jokes about me. Complaints. Plans. Little intimate comments that made my own home feel like a hotel room I had been paying for. Then I saw the message that changed everything. Claire had written, "He actually apologized to you." I almost felt bad. Ryan replied, "He'll believe whatever you tell him. He always does." I read it once. Then again. Then a third time. And something inside me went still. For months, I had been looking for proof that they betrayed me. But that message proved something worse. They knew what they were doing to my mind. They knew I was being made to doubt myself. And they thought it was funny. I printed everything. The doorbell images. The restaurant receipt. The messages. Screenshots with dates. I made copies. Because by then I trusted paper more than people. I put it all into a gray envelope and kept it in my desk drawer at work. For 2 weeks, that envelope sat there like a quiet witness. Whenever I felt myself wondering if I had misunderstood, I opened the drawer and looked at it. No. I had not misunderstood. My parents' 40th wedding anniversary was coming up. My mother had reserved a private room at an upscale restaurant downtown. Family, cousins, old friends, everyone who had watched Ryan be perfect and me be difficult. Ryan was supposed to give a toast. Of course he was. Claire bought a new dress for the dinner. Navy blue, elegant. She asked me if it looked nice. I told her yes. She smiled like we were still married. That almost broke me more than the lying. On the night of the dinner, I put on a dark suit, drove to my office first, and placed the gray envelope inside my jacket. It felt heavier than paper should feel. Claire noticed I was quiet in the car. "Please don't make tonight uncomfortable," she said. I looked at the road ahead. "No," I said. "I think tonight is going to be very clear." She didn't ask what I meant. Maybe some part of her already knew. The restaurant was warm, expensive, and full of people pretending families are cleaner than they are. My mother looked beautiful that night. My father wore the watch she had given him 20 years earlier. People were laughing, taking pictures, raising glasses. Ryan moved through the room like he owned it. Handshakes, hugs, easy jokes. That polished smile. Claire sat beside me, close enough that our arms touched. To everyone else, we probably looked like a normal married couple. I remember thinking how strange it was that Betrayal could sit beside you wearing perfume. Dinner went smoothly. Too smoothly. Then dessert came, and my mother tapped her glass because it was time for speeches. My father spoke first. He thanked everyone. He cried a little when he talked about marriage taking patience, forgiveness, and loyalty. That word loyalty hit the table and sat there between me, Claire, and Ryan. Then Ryan stood. Of course, Ryan stood. He held his glass and gave the kind of speech people love. Funny enough to keep them smiling, emotional enough to make my mother dab her eyes with a napkin. He talked about family. He talked about commitment. He talked about standing beside people through difficult seasons. Then he looked at me. Just for a second. Family, Ryan said, means standing beside each other, even when someone becomes hard to love. A few people glanced my way. There it was. The knife. Hidden inside a toast. The old Ethan would have sat there and swallowed it. The old Ethan would have gone home shaking, replaying the line in the shower, wondering why he hadn't said anything. But the old Ethan had apologized to the man who betrayed him. And I was done being that man. I stood up. The room got quiet, but not fully. People still had polite smiles, expecting maybe another toast. I picked up my water glass, then set it back down. "You're right, Ryan," I said. "Family should stand beside the truth. So let's finally do that." Claire turned toward me. Her face lost color. Ryan smiled. But it was tight now. "Ethan. Not tonight." I pulled the gray envelope from inside my jacket and placed it on the table. My mother whispered, "What is that?" I opened it. I did not yell. I did not throw anything. I did not call anyone names. I simply handed the first page to my father. Doorbell camera stills. Ryan entering my house when I was at work. Then the restaurant receipt. Then the messages. My father's face changed slowly, like his mind was trying to reject what his eyes were reading. My mother took the next page from him with shaking hands. Claire started crying. Ryan said, This is completely out of context. I looked at him. For once in your life, I said, stop performing. The room went silent. One cousin leaned forward to read. Someone whispered, oh my God. My aunt covered her mouth. Claire touched my arm. Ethan, please. I moved my arm away. No, I said. You don't get to ask me for mercy in the room where you helped make me look crazy. Ryan's voice sharpened. You're embarrassing Mom and Dad. That almost made me smile. Even then, even with proof on the table, his first instinct was to make my truth sound rude. I picked up the page with the message. He actually apologized to you. I almost felt bad. I read it aloud. Then I read Ryan's reply. He'll believe whatever you tell him. He always does. My mother sat down like her knees had stopped working. My father didn't look at me. That hurt. Even then, it hurt. Claire sobbed harder. But the room had changed. Her tears didn't control it anymore. I looked at her and said, you didn't just betray our marriage. You helped him make me question my own mind. Then I took off my wedding ring. My hand felt strange without it. Lighter and ruined at the same time. I placed it on the table beside the evidence. Ryan said my name, but I was already done listening to my brother say anything. I turned to my parents. You asked me to apologize to him, I said. Remember that. Then I walked out. Nobody stopped me. Or maybe someone did, and I just didn't care anymore. Outside, the air was cold. I stood on the sidewalk in front of that restaurant, breathing like I had just come up from underwater. My phone started buzzing before I reached my car. Claire, my mother, my father, Ryan. I turned it off. For the first time in months, the silence did not feel like punishment. It felt like mine. The next morning, I woke up in a hotel room with a stiff neck and a dead phone. For a few minutes, I forgot. Then everything came back. The table. The envelope. Claire crying. Ryan's face. My mother's hands shaking. I charged my phone because adulthood is cruel and practical. Even when your life is collapsing, you still need battery percentage. There were 47 missed calls. Claire had left voicemails. My mother had texted paragraphs. My father had written one message. Call me. Ryan sent several. The first said, you went too far. The second said, you destroyed this family. The third said, you ruined my reputation over a personal mistake. That one made me laugh out loud in a hotel room with bad coffee and no toothbrush. I replied to him once. No. I returned it to its owner. Then I blocked him. Claire wanted to meet. I agreed. But only in a public place and only to discuss the logistics of separation. She arrived looking like she had not slept. There was a time when that would have made me reach for her hand. That time was gone. She cried. She said she was confused. She said Ryan had made her feel seen. She said our marriage had become distant. I listened. Then I said, you could have left me. She looked down. You could have told me you were unhappy. You could have asked for counseling. You could have done 100 things before choosing my brother and helping him convince my family I was unstable. She whispered. I know. But knowing after being caught is not the same as honesty. My parents tried to arrange a family meeting. I refused. My mother cried over the phone and said, Ryan was wrong, but why did you have to do it in front of everyone? That sentence told me everything I needed to know. Not, how could he do that to you? Not, we should have believed you. Not even, are you okay? Why did you have to embarrass him? I said, Mom, you were fine when I was embarrassed. She got quiet. I filed for divorce. It was ugly in the boring legal way. Forms, signatures, accounts, furniture. The division of a life that had already been emotionally burned to the ground. I moved into a smaller apartment near the edge of the city. It had old floors, one bedroom, and a balcony barely large enough for a chair. It was not impressive. But nobody lied to me there. That mattered. For months, I operated like a machine. Work. Gym. Therapy. Groceries. Sleep when possible. Repeat. Therapy helped, although I hated it at first. Sitting in a room explaining how my wife and brother betrayed me made me feel like I was reading the plot of a cheap movie. But the therapist said something I kept. She didn't only break trust. She recruited your support system into doubting you. That was exactly it. Claire broke the marriage. Ryan broke the family. My parents broke something quieter. The belief that truth would matter to them if I was the one telling it. Over time, I built a life that did not require their permission. I started taking private consulting jobs on the side. Construction planning, budgeting, project recovery. I had always been good at seeing where things would fail before they failed. Funny skill to have, considering my personal life had collapsed like a cheap deck in the rain. Slowly, the side work grew. A former colleague referred me to a developer. Then another. Within 2 years, I left my job and opened a small consulting firm. Not huge. Not glamorous. No private jet, no dramatic billionaire ending. Sorry to disappoint anyone waiting for me to buy the restaurant and fire everyone. But it was mine. My name on the door. My clients. My schedule. My peace. I heard about Ryan through other people because families leak information even when you block the source. He had lost some friends after that anniversary dinner. Some relatives stopped inviting him around. But my parents stayed close to him. Of course they did. Ryan eventually married a woman named Madison. She came from money, knew investors, and helped him rebuild his image. My mother told someone it was proof Ryan had moved forward. Moved forward. That's a lovely phrase people use when they want the victim to stop remembering. I did not care enough to be angry anymore. At least, that is what I told myself. Then, 3 years after the night of the gray envelope, Ryan walked into my office. And for the first time in my life, he looked smaller than me. I almost didn't recognize him at first. Not because his face had changed that much, but because the performance was gone. Ryan had always dressed like someone expecting applause. Sharp suits, expensive shoes, watch angled just enough to be noticed. That day, he wore a wrinkled blazer and looked like he had slept badly for a month. My assistant came to my office door and said, "There's a Ryan Miller here. He says he's your brother." I looked up from my desk. For a second, the old reflex hit me. The family reflex. The one that said Ryan enters. Ethan adjusts. Then I remembered I was not in my parents' dining room. I was in my office. I said, "Send him in." Ryan stepped inside and looked around. I could tell he was surprised. Not impressed exactly. Ryan hated being impressed by me. But surprised. "Nice place," he said. I said nothing. He sat without being invited, then seemed to realize that was no longer something he could do. He shifted awkwardly. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see," he said. "That's the first honest thing you've said to me in years." He swallowed. Ryan explained what had happened, though I already knew pieces of it. His real estate deals had gone bad. He had taken investor money for one project and used it to cover costs on another. He had hidden debts from Madison. Signed documents he should not have signed. Promised returns he could not deliver. When the market turned, the lies had nowhere left to hide. Clients were suing. Madison had left. His accounts were frozen. His partners were cutting him loose. The perfect life had not exploded all at once. It had rotted from the inside, which made sense. That was how Ryan did everything. He leaned forward. "I made mistakes." I almost laughed. "There it is," I said. "What? Mistakes? You people love that word." His jaw tightened. "I didn't come here to fight." "No. You came here because you need something." He looked away. There it was. The truth, sitting quietly between us without a gray envelope this time. Ryan needed me to give a character statement. He wanted me to say he was not the kind of person who intentionally deceived people. That despite our personal history, I believed he was fundamentally honest. Fundamentally honest. There are phrases so ridiculous they should come with background music. I leaned back in my chair. "You want me to tell a court you're honest? I'm asking you to remember I'm your brother." That was when I felt it. Not rage. Not satisfaction. Something colder and cleaner. Clarity. "You didn't need a brother when you were taking my wife," I said. "You needed one when the bill came due." His face changed. For the first time, I think he understood that the old door was not just closed. It had been removed from the wall. Ryan said. I said I was sorry. "No." I said. "You said you hurt me because you need help now. That's not the same thing." He stared at the floor. I waited for him to argue. To charm. To twist. To become Ryan again. But he just looked tired. Maybe consequences had finally done what love never could. Maybe they had made him quiet. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered Claire crying at that table. My mother asking why I embarrassed him. My father refusing to look at me. Ryan whispering, "See? That wasn't so hard." After I apologized for the wound he had made. No. I did not owe him a rescue. "I won't lie for you," I said. "That's the difference between us." He left without another word. A week later, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Not because I wanted reconciliation. Because curiosity is a terrible habit. She sounded older. She said Ryan was in serious trouble. She said she and Dad had helped him financially, but it was not enough. She said Madison was gone. She said everything was falling apart. Then she cried and said, "I'm sorry, Ethan." I closed my eyes. There was a time when those words would have healed something. Now they just arrived late. "I should have believed you." She said. "Yes." I said. "You should have." She cried harder. I did not comfort her. That may sound cruel, but I had spent too many years comforting people who were upset by the consequences of hurting me. She asked if we could meet. Start over. Talk as a family. I looked around my apartment that evening. Same small balcony. Same old floors. A life that did not look perfect, but felt honest. I said, Mom, you didn't lose me because I walked away. You lost me when I told the truth and you asked me to apologize for it. She had no answer. Sometimes people think closure is a conversation where everyone finally understands. Most of the time, closure is accepting that some people only understand after it costs them something. I did not go back. I did not write a public post about Ryan. I did not celebrate his downfall. I did not call Claire. I did not ask for details. I just kept living. That was the part no one had prepared me for. Peace is quieter than revenge. It does not give you the dramatic music or the perfect final line. It gives you coffee in your own kitchen. A phone that does not light up with lies. A bed you can sleep in without wondering who is laughing at you behind your back. The gray envelope is still in a drawer in my office. I don't open it anymore. I don't need to. For a long time, I thought that envelope was proof for my family. Proof for Claire. Proof for Ryan. Proof that I was not crazy. But now I understand it was mostly proof for me. Proof that what I saw was real. Proof that love without respect is just another kind of trap. Proof that a family can be loud about loyalty and still stand beside a lie. My brother betrayed my marriage, but he did not destroy me. He showed me who was willing to protect the truth, and who only wanted silence because silence was easier for them. 3 years later, his perfect life fell apart. Mine did not become perfect, but it became mine. And after everything Ryan took, that was the one thing he never got to touch again. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you really like our videos, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.